First of all, I would like to welcome to Romania Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte. This is his first visit in this quality in Romania, and I'm happy to welcome here. We've had the discussion, a very productive one. I would like to mention that during these days, especially tomorrow, NATO and Romania are organizing jointly NATO Industry Forum with some hundreds of companies from defense industry participating in this forum, an event that is being organized once in 2 years, and we are happy to organize it here in Romania. As for NATO and defense, Romania is implementing the national strategy for defense industry. This means 2024-2030. This means also that we are taking very seriously the revigoration of this economic area. We have a tradition. We did not have the best management during the last years, but within this context, we need to revigorate, and we'll revigorate it. We also have had a discussion about the security situation in the Euro-Atlantic space and cooperation that we need to have within this context. We've discussed about the need of increasing the defense spendings. As you know, that has been the conclusion of the summit in The Hague. We also have discussed about Ukraine and how we are going to continue the aid for Ukraine. And also, we discussed about the Eastern Sentry. It's a NATO program for air defense of the eastern flank, including Romania. Not only the part about the drones, but also a full program of defense, air defense, a coherent air defense program on the entire eastern flank. And within this context, we also have discussed about the additional capacities that are to be brought to the entire eastern flank, including Romania. On behalf of Romania, I've also mentioned that Romania is to continue, as I've said, it will continue to invest in consolidating its capabilities, military capabilities. We have discussed a little bit about the Black Sea area, where Romania has a special interest of security. As for the eastern flank, also we've discussed about the hybrid threats and the way we can cooperate on this. We reaffirmed the fact that Romania will fulfill its obligations to which it's committed and will continue to be a provider of security and of a country contributing to the Euro-Atlantic security. And as a conclusion of these discussions, I'm inviting the Secretary General to continue. The conclusion is that our country has allies, and it is accordingly protected against any threatening potential. Secretary General, dear Mark, you have the floor.
And President Dan, dear Nicusor, it's a pleasure to be here with you in Bucharest. And we had already indeed very fruitful discussions on my first visit in this capacity to Romania. For more than 20 years now, Romania has been a steadfast and valued ally. You host the French-led NATO Forward Land Forces, strengthening our deterrence and defense posture on our eastern flank. Next week, as part of the Dacian exercise, NATO will exercise scaling the presence from a battalion to a brigade. Romania provides important leadership in the context of the Black Sea region. You already mentioned it, which is, can I stress this, of strategic importance to the whole of the alliance. NATO also highly values Romania's, Bulgaria's and Turkey's efforts in this Black Sea region to expand demining and patrols. You contribute to NATO missions in Kosovo and Iraq, contributing to peace and stability beyond your borders. And you are a strong supporter of Ukraine as they defend against Russian aggression and pursue peace. Romania understands the importance of investing in defense, and you lead by example. You already spend more than 2% of your GDP on defense, with plans to increase to 3.5% by 2030. And an additional 1.5% of GDP is earmarked for defense and security-related investments. In all these ways, it is clear that Romania is invested in NATO, and let me be clear, NATO is invested in Romania. In recent months, you have seen Russian drone incursions into your airspace. NATO's response has been swift and decisive. Regardless of intent, NATO takes these incidents extremely seriously, and we will remain vigilant. Deterrence is the bedrock of our defense. And so we are making crystal clear that NATO is ready, willing and able to do what it takes to defend. This includes, indeed, activities like Eastern Sentry that add strength and flexibility to our posture along the entire eastern flank, including the Black Sea region. This means more capabilities that can be brought to bear whenever and wherever needed. There should be no doubt of NATO's resolve to protect the alliance on land, at sea and in the air. And we're working together with industry to secure the technology, artillery and ammunition we need to continue to defend every inch of Allied territory. And here too, Romania is playing an important role. Thank you again, because today and tomorrow I will attend, thanks to your hospitality, the NATO Industry Forum here in Bucharest, an event that really illustrates the best of NATO, bringing together civilian and military allies and partners, government officials and industry leaders, from big firms to the small startups. And we will be meeting with one shared goal: to help bridge the gap between what we have and what we need. NATO and the defense industry are working hand in hand to accelerate innovation, procurement and production. We are working together to scale up production while driving down cost, to speed up innovation and adaptation, and stay ahead of the curve, because our adversaries will continue to test us. We cannot be found wanting. We have vital work to do together. President Dan, dear Nicusor, thank you once again for your warm welcome and your leadership. Again, thanks so much.
Întrebări.
Questions. Hello, Emastoica DG24. It's a question that I'm going to raise. If you can both answer, President and Secretary General, NATO Secretary General, what has happened with the withdrawal of hundreds of troops from the territory of our country was of concern, and some believe that that was invitation for Russia. That's why I would like to ask you, how has NATO seen this change? And you've talked about the military capabilities that are to be brought. Are there any states so far that want to supplement this?
Posture are not unusual. And even with this adjustment, the US force posture in Europe remains larger than it has been for many years. There are still many more US forces on the continent than before 2022, and you have seen the commitment by President Trump and his administration made very clear at the summit in The Hague of his total commitment to NATO and to our joint endeavors. And maybe focus a little bit on the two main subjects today, the forward land forces. I already maybe both discussed what is happening, that we are exercising to scale them up to a brigade level, which is very important. But let me also say a little bit more about Eastern Sentry. First of all, it is deliberately designed to be flexible and responsive at the same time. It will involve traditional air, land and sea-based military assets, but it will also incorporate innovative technologies and tactics designed to deal with all the new and novel challenges, like those from sea drones, just as we have done with Baltic Sentry. This military activity not only adds additional assets from allies, it also better connects the range of assets already available all along our eastern flank, from the high north to the Black Sea and beyond. And therefore it adds flexibility, it adds strength to our posture, and it will make clear that as a defensive alliance, we are always ready to defend. And with this Eastern Sentry, we can bring more capabilities to bear wherever and whenever needed. So also in Romania.
Da, mai răspuns în parte la această.
I've already answered partly to this question. As the Secretary General is saying, the program Eastern Sentry, or the Sentry of the East, means on one hand more military capabilities, and on the other hand, people when it is needed. And we have an example these days. These large military drill in Cinco and localities around, with more than 5 militaries exercising the type of reacting to threats in order to deter, of course. Hello, I'm Madalin Puiu, Romania TV. As you have already mentioned, Black Sea and security at the Black Sea, we see currently in Poland and the Baltic states an increased presence both of American troops and North Atlantic Alliance. I'd like to ask, first of all, why at present this is an increased presence in Poland and the Baltic states compared to Romania, and if you believe there is a disbalance between the Black Sea and Poland and also the Baltic states.
There from the high north to up and including the Black Sea and beyond. That's point number one. And wherever and whenever needed, we can upskill, bring extra support where needed if our defense requires that, including in Romania. But also, let me stress very much what the President said about the forward land forces. The fact that we are training here to skill them up from 1,500 to over 5,000 troops, so that we are able, whenever necessary, to immediately get all the troops in Romania needed to bring the forward land forces at the level where they can help to defend Romania. But let me add another thing, and this is the following. Yes, we have Eastern Sentry. Fantastic, great, we need it because it defends the whole eastern flank, again, from the high north up to and including the Black Sea and beyond. And yes, we have the forward land forces in 8 countries now, including Romania, because it helps us with many countries participating to defend all the countries on the eastern flank. But this is not all. Of course, you have your own proud Romanian armed forces to defend Romania, but if an attack would take place from whoever, be it the Russians or whoever would attack NATO or would attack Romania particularly, it is not only Eastern Sentry which will help you. It is not only the forward land forces which will help you, it is then the whole of NATO which will come to the rescue with its fleet of F-35s, its full naval capacity and its full land forces capacity. This is how NATO works. And not only in theory, but because we have all the plans in place to make sure that we defend every inch of Allied territory. And I really want to stress this, because otherwise there is this feeling we have all these abbreviations and activities. We need them on a day-to-day basis. We can scale them up wherever necessary. We can bring more capabilities where needed. But in the end, if this country would be under attack, it is 31 other nations coming to the rescue of Romania. This is how NATO works. And I think this makes us unbeatable, absolutely unbeatable. And that is why I believe that nobody will ever try.
Yes, there is no such division between North and South anywhere. Nowhere in the NATO plans, in the NATO strategies, in the different meetings, in the NATO programs, as the Eastern Century is, in the EU programs that are complementary, as the so-called the wall against the drones. This issue, in my opinion, does not exist. There is an approach, a joint approach about the eastern flank, because for NATO and Europe, the threat, the obvious threat at present, is in the eastern flank. And if there would be some threat on the southern flank, we'll have a uniform answer on that flank, on southern flank. Hello, Antenna 3, CNN. Question for both of you. Is the European Union and NATO are to make concrete steps in order to implement that idea announced that the President of the European Commission, that anti-drone wall transform into anti-drone shield, or every country needs to take it by itself?
Between NATO and the European Union, NATO is about the standard setting, about the capabilities. It is about the hard military side of a potential conflict. We are a defensive alliance, but we have to be prepared for any eventuality. The EU is extremely capable when it comes to the internal market, when it comes to organizing the defense industrial base, bringing countries and companies together. And what we are doing basically when it comes to these initiatives coming out of NATO, including in Eastern Century, because Eastern Century has this component of becoming step by step better and better at in our anti-drone technologies, and what the EU is doing when it comes to anti-drone technologies. We are really leveraging each other's strengths. This is how it works. And this is why that combination is so very powerful.
Yes, if you are to look at the document that the European Council adopted 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, the so-called the roadmap is for defense, you will see that each and every program it talks about, including this program about drones, it is very clearly explained and said in cooperation with NATO. There is no competition between EU and NATO. On the contrary, these programs are complementary, and they are integrated into the general defense, NATO General Defense Plan. And as a component of this plan, there are tasks for every member state, and there are facts that are interoperable and in the NATO coordination, so to say. And if I may, I would like to add, there is new information that Russia, Putin, called the Council of Defense of Federation as a reaction to the nuclear tests started by U.S. this morning. Is there any answer of NATO?
To react to every meeting President Putin is organizing. He is well paid as President of Russia, so I guess he has to meet sometimes with his people.
Hi, thanks very much for the press conference. Victor Jack from Politico. I just had a couple of follow-up questions on the first colleague that asked questions. The first being, even if it doesn't have any concrete material impact, symbolically at least, does the US troop withdrawal from Romania send a bad signal to Russia at a time when Putin is ramping up hybrid attacks against the alliance? And have any other allies already committed to replace these troops with their own? Thank you.
Again, this happens all the time. I really think we are making a little bit too much out of this. So the US has a big presence in Europe. And that presence is there. And within that presence, they are always looking how can they make best use of their resources they have in Europe within, of course, helping NATO to defend every inch of NATO territory. These adjustments take place. Please don't read too much into that. The fact that we have Eastern Sentry, that we have the forward land forces, that we are scaling up to brigade level in the exercise next week, and all the other stuff we are doing is evidence that we are as strong as is necessary. And as I said, wherever and whenever needed, we can always scale up collectively, including in Romania.
Da, la fel ca să completez ce s-a spus deja.
In order to add what it has been already said, as it has been said in Europe and in Romania, the American presence is more powerful than in 2020. The military exercise taking place now is an evidence that we are coordinated for large movements of troops, and the Eastern Sentry wants to do that, to have united defense in the eastern flank. So there is no concern, no worry. Vlad Ungar, Romanian television, Secretary General, President, the latest assessment of NATO is about the evolution of hybrid war in Romania. What advice would you give to Romania in order to fight the hybrid war, especially that in Romania and Eastern Europe are citizens considering that Putin is a patriot?
To hybrid, and the word is a bit strange, because on the hybrid we have seen assassination attempts, we have seen in some countries the jamming of commercial airplanes, which could pose great risks, of course, to commercial aviation. We have seen an attack on the NHS in the United Kingdom, so I don't like the word hybrid too much. But using, okay, it is the accepted language, and clearly this is something where within NATO and within our allies we are working extremely actively to make sure that we counter whatever is necessary. I mean, you take, for example, the situation Christmas time last year when the undersea sea cable was cut between Estonia and Finland. We immediately launched Baltic Sentry, and that was launched to make sure that we would be able to use in the latest technologies, etc., to counter what happened there. So sometimes it is big what we do, sometimes it is smaller, sometimes you cannot see it, but we are working very hard collectively to make sure that we defend against any threat, including hybrid threats.
Da, hibrid înseamnă mai.
Hybrid means several things. It means cyber. It means, as Secretary General has said, attacks on the critical infrastructure. You've meant disinformation. This is relatively new for the member states, for the NATO member states, and NATO. NATO has a strategy we talked about, and it's obvious that we need to cooperate and share our experience as for this relatively new threat. Thank you.